All right, so we've taken a look at depth perception as part of how our mind pieces together sensory information to give us meaning. And with depth perception, we specifically looked at visual input, obviously, to see distance and to create a visual 3D world. In AP Psych, we also need to know about Gestalt perception. So Gestalt is a German word from meaning parts to whole, basically. If you think about what that means in terms of perception, think of all the different sensory input that's coming in to the mind at any given time. The mind has to piece those things together, that information together, to create one reality, right? To give us meaning from all that information. Get through this. So there are 6 basic principles in Gestalt, and each one, again, kind of keep that original thought in mind that we take pieces of information and create a whole in terms of perception. So here are your 6 different Gestalt principles. First one's proximity. So our minds, again, trying to simplify, think of all this information coming in. Our minds tend to group together objects that are close together. So you see an example down here. So instead of seeing whatever 16 different circles, I'm looking over here on the right side and the images there, we piece together vertical columns in this case because the columns are closer together than the rows are, right? So things that are close together we tend to group together. Closure, you see it over here on the top right. Closure, the brain is really good at using experience to fill in gaps to create a whole. So again, if you go back and think about some other concepts from earlier in this unit, top-down processing in particular, the brain is guiding the eyes top-down to take meaning from something that is really kind of meaningless in terms of the information that's actually there. So you can easily see a square, a circle, a triangle here because your brain has lots of experience with squares, circles, and triangles. Third is similarity. We tend to group things together that have similar attributes, right? So you see down here, again, the example over on the right, you got the white circles, and then you got the dark circles. We tend to group together things that are similar. So I see 2 groups of white circles and then 2 groups of darker circles. Simplicity, we tend to look for the simplest answer. And that's kind of like the general Gestalt idea in the first place. Our brains are trying to take all this information and boil it down and give us a concise reality. Continuity, we see things in continuous patterns as opposed to broken patterns. So if you see the example over here, it's just a vertical line and a horizontal line. You don't see 2 90-degree angles. You see continuous lines, right? And I've got a kind of a funny example in a second for continuity. And then lastly, this is probably the one that you'll see most often in terms of Gestalt is figure ground. And the example here is the vases and the faces. So we'll take a look at that in a second too. So whenever we're looking out, there's a figure and then there's a background, right? So typically that's easy. I can look at my computer, that's the figure in my visual field, and everything else is the background. Or I can look at this, Halloween just over, this guy right now, he's the figure, and everything else is the background. But if I set him here and look at my computer, that figure is now in the background, and this is the figure my computer is. Some other examples here of the same ideas, these Gestalt ideas. This is a good, very quick video that'll give you some insight into these ideas as well. Main ones to know: no closure and no figure ground. If you're only going to remember 2, those are the ones that pop up the most: closure and figure ground.